Nevertheless, the Lord raised up judges, which delivered them out of the hand of those that spoiled them. And yet they would not hearken unto their judges.
So, the introduction to Judges, one thing that will be important this evening, was Israel one solid nation?
Absolutely not.
No, how are they split up?
Into
12 tribes. They're split up into 12 tribes. So they had 12 tribes. That'll be important to this evening, and you'll kind of see why here in a minute. They had 12 individual tribes. Then we talked about Othniel. Othniel can be described as what? The perfect judge. That's kind of his nickname. He's the perfect judge. There's about 6 verses. We see the entire rotation of what Israel's doing. Othniel was a good guy before he saved Israel. He was a good guy after he saved Israel. He was just genuinely a good guy. He's kind of the ideal judge. He did it the right way, and he was a good guy in the process of doing it. And so that's kind of where we're at. So this evening, we're going to be moving on to Ehud. How many of you guys know the story of Ehud? Oh, you're going to like it. It is definitely a roller coaster. We're going to look at Ehud and Shamgar this evening because they kind of talk about the same thing. But before we do that, we're going to take a couple minutes. You're going to have about 3 minutes to kind of look at this card and write some stuff down on this card. Now, I will not be taking these cards up. We will not be putting these somewhere. We will not be hanging these somewhere in front. So you can write whatever you'd like to on there, and then you can take it, fold it up in your pocket. I would encourage you to write something, because that kind of helps you process things and move things out from your brain down to actually being able to read and process certain things, right? So, what you're going to do is I want you to kind of write about a time that you ever felt useless. Man, there was a time in your life maybe where you felt useless, you felt worthless, you felt like you just couldn't do anything. Then I want you to think through a couple things that you think would make you more useful. Man, what ability do you wish you had? What thing do you wish you could do? And you say, man, if I could do that, then I'd be something. Man, if I could do that, I'd be useful. People would really look up to me and really, really want me to help them out and do some things. So you have about 3 minutes, and then we'll come back together and we'll talk about Ehud and Shamgar. So as you guys are finishing up, now as I kind of thought about this, you know, one thing I wish I could do better was write better. I can't write very well. I have terrible spelling. I have terrible grammar. And it's something I wish I could do better. It's just something, and now it's something I've worked on. It's something that I've spent a lot of my life, a college career life, trying to get better at and taking constructive criticism by professors and things in an effort to get better at doing that. But it's something I wish I could just do better. I've met people who seem to understand how to write and grammar and spelling, and they kind of have all that figured out. It's like, man, I wish I could just sit down and write something and know it was going to be the way it was supposed to be. But I don't have that yet. I don't have it. Matter of fact, I can't spell over the hoop, so you read something I write and think, this is written by 3rd grader. I can't spell very well.
I think you have to.
Thank you. Thank you. And even in my life, I've had times where I have felt worthless. I've had times in my life where I did something, said something, or somebody looked over me and said, you know what, you're just not the person we want. That when we look for somebody we're interested in, you're just not that guy. And so I've had times in my life where I felt worthless, and I'm sure you all have too. It's kind of one of those things. I think everybody has a time in their life where they could say, man, I just felt genuinely worthless. Or a gift or something they said, man, I wish I could do that. If I could do that, then everybody would want me. They'd want me around. If I could be that thing or do that thing. And we're going to look at Ehud and Shamgar. Ehud and Shamgar. Shamgar has a grand total of 1 verse listed about him. There's not very much there, but in that 1 verse you see something very, very interesting about him. As well as Ehud. Ehud has a considerable large section listed to him. And the story is kind of funny. It's written to be funny. Not every story or event in Scripture is meant to be funny, but Ehud seems to be one of those. It's kind of listed in a slightly humorous way. So, let's start. Let's start there. Yeah, let's start there. So let's go to chapter 3, verse 12. Chapter 3, verse 12. 1:16, not 5:16. It's going drastically further. It's going drastically further. want to replace you with machines. Okay, verse 12. And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Did again what was evil in the sight of the Lord. What is that verse there? We talked about it last week with Othniel. What does that verse there kind of indicate? Yep, we have restarted our little cycle. Every single time we restart the cycle, it says something like that. And then once again, it was evil in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord strengthened Eglon, the king of Moab, against Israel. Because they had done what was evil in the sight of the Lord, he gathered himself the Ammonites and the Amalekites, and he went and defeated Israel. And they took possession of the city of palms. And the people of Israel served Eglon, the king of Moab, 18 years. So what has happened? Pretty easy. Eglon, they started serving other gods. God raised up Eglon, who conquered them in the city of palms. They also conquered Jerusalem. Verse 15. Then the people of Israel cried out to the Lord, and the Lord raised up for them a deliverer, Ehud, the son of Gera, the Benjamite, a left-handed man. He was left-handed. Any of y'all left-handed?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Both of you?
Yes.
Well, so was Ashlyn, we got rid of her.
Kicked her out. Alright, so we got two left-handed. Anybody else left-handed?
No, all normal people.
I wish I was left.
Okay. What do you think of left-handed people?
They're pretty great. We're amazing.
Look what happened to Ashley.
Now, what is, nowadays, what do we say about left-handed people? What does kind of the research indicate?
They're good at sports.
The research kind of indicates that left-handed people seem to be more intelligent as a whole.
Oh, that's
okay.
Alec is not smart enough.
Right? The research just kind of seems to point that direction. They say it seems like left-handed people as a whole are smarter than right-handed people. So congratulations, guys. Worked out all right. However, in history, were left-handed people always looked at like this? No, my father is left-handed. And for those of you who don't know, my father was born in Germany. My grandmother and my whole dad's side is German. We have some stories about that. We'll say that later. He's German and he's left-handed. As a baby, they would constantly give him stuff in his right hand, and they would actually slap his left hand when he tried to pick something up with it, because they didn't want a left-handed baby.
He's still left-handed?
He's now ambidextrous because he was forced to do everything with his right hand. But he's left-handed. And in most cultures, that's kind of the case. In most cultures, that's kind of the case. And so this indication here, he was a left-handed man, kind of makes it a little bit different, right? That kind of is an indication that that's a little different. And so we'll continue on. We will continue on talking about Ehud. Left-handed Ehud is what everybody calls him. The people of Israel sent tribute by him to Eglon, the king of Moab. And Ehud made for himself a sword with two edges, a cubit in length, and he bound it on his right thigh under his clothes, and he presented the tribute to King Eglon, king of Moab. Now Eglon was what?
A very fat man.
A very fat man. Odd story. A very fat man. Verse 18, and when Ehud had finished presenting the tribute, he sent away the people who carried the tribute, but he himself turned back at the idols near Gilgal and said, I have a secret message for you, O king. And he commanded silence, and all the attendants went out from his presence. And Ehud came to him as he was sitting alone in the cool roof chamber. And Ehud said, I have a message from God for you. And he arose from his seat, and Ehud reached with his left hand, took the sword from his right thigh, and thrust it into his belly. And the hilt also went in after the blade, and the fat closed over the blade.
What?
That's so cool.
What?
He was quite a large man.
All the way in and close around it?
That's so cool.
Oh, hey, it gets better.
Better?
It gets better. 21. Let's go back to 21. And Ehud reached with his left hand and took the sword from his right thigh and thrust it into his belly, and the hilt also went in after the blade, and the flap closed around it, and he did not pull the sword out of his belly, and the dung came out.
Okay.
So after he got stabbed, what did King Eglon do?
He pooped.
Pooed himself. Then Ehud went out into the porch and closed the doors of the roof chamber behind him and locked them. When he had gone, the servants came, and when they saw the doors of the roof chamber were locked, they thought, surely he's relieving himself in the closet of the cool chamber. What did they think he was doing? Oh, he was going to the bathroom.
Well, he did.
And they waited. How long did they wait?
Until they were embarrassed.
They waited so long they got embarrassed for him. Oh, boy, this poor guy. They got embarrassed. But when they still did not open the doors of the roof chamber, they took the key and opened them, and there lay their lord dead on the floor. Ehud escaped while they delayed, and he passed beyond the idols and escaped to Serai. When he arrived, he sounded the trumpet on the hill country of Ephraim, and then the people of Israel went down with him from the hill country, and he was their leader. And he said to them, "Follow after me, for the Lord has given our enemies, the Moabites, into your hand." So they went down after him and seized the fords of the Jordan against the Moabites, and did not allow anyone to pass over. And they killed at that time about 10,000 of the Moabites, all strong, able-bodied men. Not a man escaped. And Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest for 80 years. Left-handed Ehud. Left-handed Ehud.
I like it.
Now, there is some humor, obviously, in this story, and some irony in this event as it retells it. Not every story is humorous, right? Not every event in the Bible is meant to be funny, but for some reason, the author here seemed to kind of write it in kind of an odd way. He left in a lot of details that seemed kind of odd. First thing is this: King Eglon, his name literally means fat ox. Oh, God. Eglon means fat ox. Which is funny, considering he was what? He was a very fat man. So fat that when he got stabbed with a sword, the fat encased the sword. Yes, ma'am?
Why do all of the names like have to do with who the person is when they're older? Did they change their names?
It's possible. Last week when we talked about double bad, that was more of a nickname that the Israelites gave him. This could very easily be the same thing. This could be more of a nickname. They called him behind his back, Fat Ox. So he was so fat that when he was stabbed with a sword, it encased around his sword. And then what happened after the king died?
He soiled himself.
He pooed himself. He pooed. So he pooed himself. Now, why would the Bible include that?
Because it's fun.
Because it's funny? Why would the Bible add that? Why would it retell that part of the event? Because it's shameful. Sure, as an Israelite, when you read this account, what would you have thought? You'd been excited, right? This king, this powerful king who conquered you, who subdued you for 18 years, he dies in his own feces. That would have been pretty great to you. You'd have thought, wow, this guy. Huh?
Let me write that down.
Let me write that down. I got to record this. It's kind of an act of disgrace. It marks his disgrace. He died in his own feces. It marks this major disgrace for him that the Israelites would have loved to have. That they would have loved to have that there. The other thing is this: Ehud was left-handed. Was a left-handed Benjamite. He was left-handed. It says that 2 or 3 times, and make sure you understand that Ehud is left-handed. Like I said, were left-handed people always seen as like the upper echelon of society before this?
Absolutely.
No.
That's why. Because a left-handed man defeated the king.
Yep. There's that. So he's left-handed. It says it a lot, and the irony gets even more here. You know what Benjamin means? No. I like where you hit it. There it goes. Son of the right hand. The irony becomes even more, son of the right hand. And so we see the irony here. We see Ehud, who's left-handed, from the tribe of Benjamin, son of the right hand. And Samuel here is trying to teach you something. Like I said, we believe Samuel wrote this book. And we'll get to the end. When we kind of get to the end, maybe we'll see here what Samuel's trying to teach. Here's something else that's interesting. Look at verses 18 and 19. Verses 18 and 19. What does Ehud do? He tricks the king. But after he does what? No. Ehud kind of leaves before returning. Now, it could have been that. That could have been his goal. Where does he get to before he finally turns around? Right, what specifically there is at Gilgal? What does it say? The idols at Gilgal. One of the commentaries I read seemed to indicate the belief is that when Ehud left, chickened out and left, he got to the idols at Gilgal and decided what? I have to do this. He saw these idols at Gilgal and he turned around. You guys ever had something you needed to do and kind of chickened out a little bit? No. He leaves before returning. He gets all the way to Gilgal. He sees the idols there and he decides, no, I got to go do this. I've got to finish this. I've got to finish this. And he goes back and he tricks and kills the king. And there was rest in the land for 80 years. There was rest in the land for 80 years. Now we come to Shamgar. Shamgar, like I said, has a grand total of 1 verse listed to him. But there are some things we can learn here. So it's at the very end of chapter 3. Page 116, in case you've lost it so far. Page 116, Shamgar, verse 31. After him was Shamgar, the son of Anath, who killed 600 of the Philistines with an ox goad. And he also saved Israel. 1 verse, that's all you get about Shamgar. What have you learned from Shamgar thus far?
He killed 600 Philistines with an ox goad.
He killed 600 Philistines with an ox goad. You guys know what an ox goad is?
No.
A cattle prod.
It's essentially a cattle prod. This is kind of more of a modern ox goad. The one that he was using was probably more of a stick. It was about 6 feet. It was about 6 feet long with a point on the end, and on the back side it had a flat piece that kind of helped rake out the stuff left by the ox. It was used for farming. It was used when they I've lost all the words. It was used when they plowed the field. That's the word I'm looking for. It was used when they plowed the field, and they would clean out the dirt and stuff out of the plow as they went. So essentially, what he was probably carrying was a glorified hoe. It was just a hoe with a point on the top. And he killed how many people? 600. 600 people. Another thing we know about Shamgar, and you'd never get this, but Shamgar a Jewish name? No, Shamgar is not a Jewish name, and he was not an Israelite. So would the Israelites pick Shamgar to defeat the Philistines for them? No. Would the Israelites ever have picked Shamgar to be their leader? No. At what point would the Israelites use a guy by the name of Shamgar to do anything? When God told them to, but probably not for anything else. Maybe the garden or to prod all. God picked Shamgar. Would the Israelites have picked Ehud? Left-handed Ehud? Probably not. So we know they wouldn't have picked Shamgar. There's no way they would have picked Shamgar. Was Shamgar a military man? No. How do you know that? Because the only thing he's got is an ox goad. Right? Did he have a sword? Did he have a bow? Was he a military leader? No. How do we know that? Because he's got an ox goad. The Philistines show up and he's like, I'm going to go kill him with this ox goad. He doesn't go grab a sword or anything. So once again, was Shamgar the guy they would have picked? No. And my slide ran together a little bit here, but I think we can get it. Shamgar was not a Jewish name. No Israelite would have picked Shamgar to save him. No Israelite would have done that. So what is the first application from these two stories? Two events. God can use anyone. God can use anyone. Have you ever felt useless? Is there something you wish you could do better? Is there something you think that would make you useful, make you somebody worth using, somebody who's worth their salt? Is there something like that in your life? We all kind of have that thing that we wish we could do. How does Shamgar kill 600 Philistines? With an ox goad. He was a farmer. He didn't have a sword. He didn't have a bow. He probably had zero military training. Nothing is listed on how he did it, but it was probably very haphazard. From history, we know that Shamgar was then elected to be governor of Israel and died in his first year. Shamgar, by all accounts, is what? worthless. But who does God use? Shamgar. He uses what Shamgar has. He uses Shamgar's ability. Shamgar had an ox goad, and that was enough. What about Ehud? Was Ehud right-handed? No, Ehud was not right-handed. Ehud had a sword where? On his right side. If you were the guards checking Ehud to see if he had any weapons, where did the guards check? His left side. For those of you who don't know, you draw a sword with your right hand from your left side. They checked his left side. Where was the sword hidden? On his right. He knew that. He knew they weren't going to check there. God used a man who nobody else would have picked to accomplish His will. Once again, have you ever felt useless? Have you ever felt like there's something you wish you could do better? God can use anyone. God can use a farmer with an ox goad, a glorified hoe with a point. God can use a left-handed man who has no military training or understanding, who makes a 16-inch sword and hopes for the best. The other application is this: God can use anything. God can use anything. Just because you think there's an ability you have, or ability that you could get that will make you worth something, just because you think there's something that you could go get and grasp and be like, now I'm worth something, God can use anything you have. God can use any ability you have. God can use anything that's in your hand. God can use any of that to accomplish His will. You are not worthless. You are not broken. You are not passed over. You have worth. You are useful. You have an ability that God can use. God used a guy with an ox goad. Before today, none of you guys even knew what that was. God used a left-handed man who, by all accounts, looks like he chickened out halfway through his job and then went back. God can use anyone, and God can use anything. And the last idea is this. What we'll see, last week we saw what? Who was Othniel? What was he called? The perfect judge. He was faithful to God before and after. This week we get the understanding that God constantly uses people the world picks last. And so maybe you've been there. Have you ever been picked last for something? Have you ever been passed over? God constantly uses people who are picked last. God constantly uses people who the world doesn't want. God constantly does that because you have worth. Just because the people around you do not see your usefulness or your worth doesn't mean God misses it. God used Shamgar and He used Ehud. He picked the people the world picked last to accomplish His great will. Shamgar killed 600 people with a stick. Ehud killed the king of the mightiest nation in the world. Not only did he do that, but he left the king in his own filth as he left. God constantly uses people the world picks last. And kind of in closing this thought, maybe this will help sum it up, maybe it'll make it a little less clear. But it seems like Samuel here, who we believe wrote this, is talking about Ehud and then talks about Shamgar with it together to kind of prove a point to show that God can use anybody, God can use anything. Even in the left hand of God, an ox goad is deadly. Even in the left hand of God, an ox goad is deadly. God can use anything and anyone. He used a left-handed man to kill a king, and He used a farmer to kill 600 Philistines. God is not tied back by your abilities or by what you think makes you useful or doesn't make you useful. God's not even tied back by what the people around you think you are. Even in the left hand of God, an ox goad is useful.